My wife slept with her fitness coach in our bed while I fought for my life in the ICU. So I recovered in silence and made one move that turned her career and image to ruins. They say opposites attract, but I used to think we complemented each other perfectly. My name is Mike Thompson. I'm 34 years old, and I live in Charlotte, North Carolina. I work as a financial analyst at a mid-sized investment firm downtown. Grew up on the other side of the tracks, literally. My parents were blue-collar through and through. My dad worked HVAC, and my mom cleaned houses until her knees gave out. Nothing was handed to me. I scraped my way through community college, taking night classes and bussing tables until 2 in the morning. I'd get home exhausted, sleep 4 hours, then do it all over again. It wasn't glamorous, but it made me who I am. Every dollar I saved, every paper I turned in, it all mattered. Then came Vanessa. We met at a rooftop bar downtown. I was out with coworkers celebrating a promotion. She stood out instantly, long black dress, wine glass in hand, laughing like the world belonged to her. And in a way, it did. She was magnetic. When I approached her, I expected to be brushed off. Instead, she asked if I liked jazz. That led to our first date the next weekend. I was hooked. Vanessa was a marketing executive, private university education, corner office, vacation photos in Tuscany. She had this air of control and class that I admired. I always thought, this is what success looks like. She didn't need me, and that made me want her more. Our wedding was straight out of a magazine. Country club setting, a live string quartet, designer gown. Her family covered most of it, and I chipped in where I could. From the outside, we looked like the perfect couple: brunches, getaways, Instagram reels with golden hour lighting. But on the inside, something felt off. I loved cycling. Had this early morning routine where I'd get up at 5 and ride the empty streets. Vanessa hated it, thought it was pointless. You gonna win a medal or something? She'd say, half laughing while scrolling through her phone. You look ridiculous in that helmet, by the way. Stuff like that. At first, I laughed it off, told myself it was her quirky way of teasing, but it chipped away at me little by little. Whenever I tried to talk to her about work, she'd change the subject. Her job always took center stage. Big pitch this week, new client lunch. I'd try to share about my firm's portfolio or a tough day with the markets, and she'd nod like she was humoring me, but I didn't want to see the cracks. I convinced myself we were just adjusting. Everyone said the first few years were hard, so I swallowed the little jabs and brushed off the cold shoulder moments. She was beautiful, driven, people envied us. That had to mean something, right? Back then, I thought I knew what love looked like. Turns out, I was only seeing the frame, not the picture inside. The year-end reporting season always hit like a truck. Long days bled into even longer nights. I was pulling 12-hour shifts easy, eating dinner out of vending machines and falling asleep with Excel sheets still open on my laptop. But that year, something felt different. Worse. It wasn't just tiredness. I was aching all over. My head pounded constantly, and even my bones felt sore. I chalked it up to stress. You just need to sleep in for once, Vanessa said one morning without looking up from her mirror. Or take vitamins or something. I laughed weakly. Pretty sure vitamins don't fix this kind of fatigue. Maybe stop cycling like you're training for the Tour de France. You're not 20 anymore. She always found a way to jab at things that mattered to me. I let it go. The symptoms didn't. Within days, the exhaustion turned into chills and dizziness. I'd break out in cold sweats during meetings, gripping the edge of my desk to stay upright. My skin felt hot to the touch, even though I was freezing. Still, I kept pushing through it. Deadlines didn't wait for illness. At home, I mentioned it again while Vanessa was packing for our trip to the Caribbean. You don't look that bad, she said, folding a swimsuit into her suitcase. You're probably just burnt out. This vacation's gonna fix you right up. I think I need to see a doctor before we go. Maybe get some labs drawn or something. She gave me a look. Seriously? You're being dramatic. That night, I woke up soaked in sweat. My pillow was damp, and my arms felt like they were on fire. I sat up too fast, and the room spun like a carousel. I stumbled out of bed toward the bathroom, legs barely cooperating. What are you doing? Vanessa mumbled, annoyed, still half asleep. Bathroom, I muttered, trying not to collapse. She rolled over and groaned. Can you not make so much noise? Some of us need sleep. That's when I knew. This wasn't just a rough patch. She didn't care. By the time I made it to the sink, my vision was flickering at the edges. My knees buckled. I don't remember falling, just the cold tile against my cheek. My phone was still in the bedroom, but I couldn't crawl back. I lay there, trembling and nauseous, wondering if I was dying. I must have passed out, because when I came to, it was quieter. The house was still dark. I dragged myself toward the hallway and used the wall to stand. Somehow, I made it to the nightstand and grabbed my phone. I called my brother. Mark answered on the second ring. Hey, what's up? I need help, I croaked. I think I'm really sick. Please come. He didn't ask questions. 20 minutes later, I heard the door unlock. Mark rushed in, took one look at me slumped on the floor, and cursed under his breath. Jesus, Mike, why the hell didn't you call me sooner? I couldn't answer. My lips were numb. Vanessa appeared at the top of the stairs, yawning. What's going on? Mark didn't even look at her. He just scooped me up and carried me out the front door. That was the last night I ever saw my home the same way again. The next thing I remember is the sharp sting of a needle and the blinding white of fluorescent lights overhead. My chest felt tight, like someone was sitting on it. Everything was muffled, voices far away, like I was underwater. He's septic, a woman's voice said. BP's crashing, get the fluids going. Now, I tried to speak, to ask what was happening, but my mouth wouldn't work. My body wouldn't move. Panic welled up inside me, but I couldn't scream. All I could do was slip back under. When I woke again, it was quieter, dimmer. Tubes ran from my arms. Beeping monitors blinked beside me. An oxygen mask pressed against my face. I couldn't talk, but I could see. And what I saw was Vanessa, sitting in the corner of the room, scrolling through her phone with perfect posture, legs crossed like she was in a waiting room, not an ICU. Hey, I rasped, my voice hoarse and barely there. She glanced up like I had interrupted a meeting. Oh, you're awake. That's good. I blinked, waiting for something concern, relief, anything. Instead, she looked back at her screen. I tried to lift my hand, but it felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. My body felt foreign, heavy, and fragile. I couldn't process it all at once. A nurse came in shortly after and explained everything. You had a severe bacterial infection, Mr. Thompson. It spread fast. You went septic. We had to stabilize your vitals and start antibiotics immediately. You're lucky your brother brought you in when he did. I turned my head slowly. Mark, he's been here all night. He stepped out for coffee. Of course he did. Mark always showed up when it mattered. Vanessa stood and smoothed out her dress. Well, I have a meeting in an hour. I'll check in later. Wait, I said weakly. She leaned down and kissed my forehead, like that made up for everything. Just rest, okay? And just like that, she was gone. Hours blurred. Tubes, wires, voices. Nurses checking monitors. Mark came back and sat beside me. Unlike Vanessa, he held my hand and looked me straight in the eye. You scared the hell out of us, he said. I nodded slowly. I didn't have the energy to apologize. They said if you'd waited one more day. I closed my eyes. I didn't want to hear it. Our parents arrived later that evening. Mom wept quietly while Dad stood awkwardly at the foot of the bed, unsure of what to do with his hands. Vanessa didn't return that day, or the next. When she did show up, she had a smoothie in one hand and a Bluetooth earpiece in the other. I just stopped by to see how things were going, she told the nurse cheerfully. I've got a huge campaign launch next week, but I'll pop in when I can. She was there less than 10 minutes. That same night, my condition worsened. My left shoulder, red, swollen, hot to the touch, was the source. The infection had pooled there, eating through tissue. The doctors made the call. Emergency surgery. Fast. Vanessa didn't pick up her phone when they called for consent. Mark signed the forms. While they wheeled me down the hall, I caught a glimpse of him walking beside the gurney, pale and shaken but solid. The way he looked at me, determined, terrified, I knew he would never walk away. Vanessa was gone, but Mark never left. I survived that surgery, but a different part of me died that night. The part that still believed she loved me. Waking up after the surgery felt like resurfacing from deep water. My shoulder throbbed, but the sharpness had dulled. The tubes were still there, and I was weaker than I'd ever felt, but my head was clearer. That haze, like I'd been trapped in a thick fog, was finally starting to lift. Mark was sitting next to me when I opened my eyes. He looked like hell, hair a mess, stubble growing in, wearing the same hoodie for what had to be the third day straight. But he smiled when he saw me awake. Hey, man, he said quietly. You made it. I managed a nod, barely. Thanks. You don't have to thank me. I'm your brother. The way he said it, firm, like a vow, hit harder than I expected. Vanessa came later that day. She brought a new tote bag and complained the whole time she was there. They moved the parking lot in trance again. I had to walk like a mile in heels, she said, kicking off her shoes. And my client pushed the launch to next month, so now I've got to redo half the pitch deck. I stared at her, waiting, hoping for her to ask how I was feeling. She didn't. Instead, she looked at the machine beeping beside my bed. So, are these things supposed to make noise every 10 seconds? I turned away. That evening, Mark pulled up a chair and opened his laptop. I wasn't going to say anything, but he hesitated, then pushed the screen toward me. Photos, screenshots, texts, Vanessa, with her fitness coach. The guy she'd hired 2 months ago to tighten up before summer. There were selfies of them together in the gym, then in a restaurant, then in a hotel room. My chest tightened, not just from the betrayal, but from how easily I had ignored every red flag. I had trusted her. I had defended her. Where did you find this? I asked. She left her iCloud signed in on the iPad at home, Mark said, almost apologetically. I wasn't snooping, I swear. I was trying to check your insurance info. I nodded slowly. I couldn't speak. Mark hesitated again. There's more. She brought him to the house while you were in ICU. I shut my eyes. My hands curled into fists under the blanket. Vanessa had been posting all over Instagram the past week, photos of flowers in a vase by my bedside, captions like, love heals all. She looked like a devoted wife to anyone scrolling past, but it was all a lie. Every single part of it. The pain wasn't just physical anymore. It was emotional, existential. But buried underneath the devastation was something else, clarity. I had been so focused on surviving, I hadn't realized what I was fighting for. I thought it was my life, but it wasn't. It was my freedom. Freedom from a woman who saw me as a prop. From a marriage that looked perfect on the outside and was hollow inside. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stared at the ceiling and made a silent promise. When I left this hospital, I wasn't going back to the same life. Not ever again. A week after surgery, I could finally sit up on my own. I still needed help walking, but the nurses said I was making good progress. I didn't feel strong yet. Not physically, not emotionally, but something inside me had shifted, like a switch flipped. Mark came in one afternoon carrying a folder. He looked grim. "I know you already saw the photos," he said, setting the folder on the tray table beside me, "but I thought you should see the rest." I hesitated before opening it. Inside were printouts of text messages, dozens of them. Vanessa and the trainer, his name was Kyle, exchanging everything from flirtatious emojis to blunt, explicit messages about what they were doing and where. Hotels, restaurants, even our bedroom. One message hit me harder than the rest. "He's too obsessed with work and his little biking routine. He doesn't even notice when I'm gone. He's like a roommate with a paycheck." She sent that 2 days before I collapsed. I stared at the paper. I could feel something in my chest constricting, like a vice. But it wasn't heartbreak anymore. It was anger. Steady, focused. "I've got the original saved," Mark said. "Screenshots, timestamps, even hotel receipts." He paused. "She used your Amex to book the room while you were in the ICU." I said nothing. I just nodded. That evening, I asked Mark to get in touch with an old college buddy of mine, Jason Kemp. We went to community college together, both studied finance. He went on to law school. Last I heard, he was doing divorce and asset protection. Mark made the call right away. Jason came by the hospital the next day. He walked in with a briefcase and an expression that told me he already knew everything. We talked for an hour. I explained everything. The affair, the spending, the lies. Jason listened, nodded, took notes. "I'll draw up the preliminary paperwork," he said. "We'll file immediately. Based on what I've seen, we have plenty." Vanessa had no idea. She came by that night in a pink sweater, looking polished as ever. She sat in the chair by the window and told me she was thinking about redecorating the bathroom once I got home. "The tiles are so dated," she said, flipping through Pinterest on her phone. "We need something more modern, spa-like." I stared at her, wondering how many lies she could fit in one breath. She glanced up. "What? Why are you looking at me like that?" I shook my head. "Nothing." I had already made the decision. I wasn't going to confront her here, not in my hospital room, not while I was still hooked up to IVs. I wanted to do this right, clean, controlled, on my terms. When she left, I turned to Mark. "I'm going through with it. I'm not backing down." He gave me a firm nod. "I'll help you every step of the way." I signed the initial divorce paperwork 2 days later. My hand was still shaky, but the line was clear. This was no longer about saving a marriage. It was about saving myself. Vanessa kept posting Instagram stories about healing and grateful moments. She had no idea her world was about to implode. And this time, I wasn't going to soften the blow. 2 weeks after I was discharged from the hospital, I arranged the meeting. I chose a quiet lakeside cafe about 30 minutes from the city, public enough to keep things civil, private enough that no one would overhear what didn't concern them. Mark offered to come with me, but I told him no. This one, I had to do alone. Vanessa arrived 10 minutes late, of course. She wore sunglasses, a white coat, and lipstick like she was headed to brunch. She spotted me sitting under the pergola and approached with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Hey, babe," she said lightly, setting her bag on the table. "You look better. Recovery suits you." I didn't smile back. "Thanks for coming." She slid into her chair and waved to the waitress without even asking if I was ready to order. "Let's not make this a big, dramatic thing, okay?" she said as she adjusted her napkin. "I'm guessing you want to talk about the Kyle situation." I blinked. "That what we're calling it? A situation?" Vanessa sighed. "Look, Mike, I made a mistake. I own that. But we were going through a rough patch. You were always working. You didn't see how distant you'd become. I was lonely." I leaned forward slowly and pulled the envelope from my coat. "This," I said, placing it in front of her, "is not a mistake. It's a pattern." She hesitated, eyeing the envelope like it might bite. "What is that?" "Go ahead. Open it." She flipped it open, froze. Screenshots, printed texts, hotel receipts, charges on my Amex. All of it. Her face paled as she turned the pages. One, then another, then another. I waited. Finally, she shut the folder and exhaled hard through her nose. "So what? You've been digging into my private life? You made your private life my business when you used our home as your hookup spot while I was fighting for my life." She shook her head, her hands trembling just slightly. "This doesn't have to get ugly. We can work through this." "No," I said calmly. "We can't." I reached into my jacket and pulled out another envelope. "These are the divorce papers. They'll be served formally tomorrow, but I wanted to tell you in person." Her jaw clenched. "You're serious?" "As a heart attack," I said. "Well, not that I'd know anything about those. You were too busy planning spa days to notice when my body was shutting down." Vanessa's expression shifted, from shock to offense, then to something more familiar, manipulation. "This is a huge overreaction, Mike," she said, lowering her voice. "It was just one lapse in judgment. One." I raised my eyebrows. "This folder says otherwise." She reached across the table suddenly, her tone softened. "You don't want to ruin everything we build over a stupid fling. You're just hurt. Give it time." I pushed her hand away. "What we built was a lie." She sat back, her expression darkening. "You walk away from me, you'll regret it. You really think some lawyer's going to protect you from what I can do?" I stood. "I'm not scared of you anymore." She gave one last desperate laugh. "So that's it? After everything?" I looked at her, the woman I once thought I'd grow old with. "That's it." I turned and walked away. She didn't follow. Word travels fast when your life starts falling apart, especially when your world is built on appearances. A week after our confrontation at the cafe, Vanessa's picture-perfect life began to unravel. The first crack came in the form of a deleted Instagram account. No more selfies. No more healing energy quotes. Just gone. Then came the whispers. A friend from work texted me a screenshot of a local marketing agency's press release. Vanessa had been let go due to internal restructuring, but I knew better. Her affair with Kyle wasn't just personal, it bled into her professional life. Turns out, she had brought into a couple of work events, passing him off as a consultant. It didn't take long for HR to connect the dots. Mark told me her family was embarrassed, especially after her sister found out Vanessa had used their lake house for one of her rendezvous, the same house her parents visited every spring. She tried to contact me. Of course she did. It started with a short text. Vanessa, can we talk? Please. Just once. I didn't respond. Then a voice message. Tearful, rambling, full of, I never meant to hurt you, and I just got lost. I blocked the number. A week later, she emailed me using a different address. Vanessa, you were right. I messed everything up, but I still love you. We can fix this. Please. I'll do whatever it takes. I stared at the email for a long time before deleting it. By then, I had started physical therapy. My body was still weak, but my mind was sharper than it had been in years. I went on long walks with Mark. I cooked simple meals. I even pulled my old road bike out of the garage and started cleaning it up. One Sunday, about 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I met someone. Her name was Emma. She wasn't flashy, didn't care about hashtags or curated lighting. We met at a small park while I was watching a charity 5K Mark had roped me into volunteering for. She was helping at the check-in table. We ended up talking for almost an hour, just about nothing. Dogs, food trucks, weekend hikes. It was easy, comfortable, real. Emma loved the outdoors, loved early mornings, didn't flinch when I mentioned my cycling obsession. She laughed when I told her about my helmet collection. A real laugh. I didn't tell her everything at first, but when I did, she just said, that sounds awful, but I'm glad you got out. And I was. I really was. Vanessa, from what I heard, moved back to live with her parents in Raleigh. Her job prospects dried up, and Kyle ghosted her soon after her reputation took a hit. She tried rebuilding her image, but people saw through it. Me? I started living again. It didn't happen all at once. But with every mile on my bike, every quiet Sunday morning, every deep breath that didn't carry the weight of someone else's disappointment, I felt lighter. I wasn't broken. I was finally free.